You have come here not by accident. There is no accident in the silent pilgrimage of the psyche. Something deep within you, ancient and intuitive, has been pushing at the walls of your identity, urging you to question the mask you wear and the smiles you offer, like sacrifices at an altar that has never blessed you in return. And so I ask you softly but firmly, what becomes of the empath when they no longer bow before the idol of others' comfort? Let me tell you now, when the empath stops pleasing everyone, the archetype within them begins to awaken. Not the persona, the carefully crafted social mask tailored from childhood wounds and conditioned behaviors, but the raw, forgotten core, the self. The empath, you see, is often not born but forged, molded not from light, but from necessity to survive in an environment where feeling the room was safer than feeling oneself. This is the first rupture in the empath's illusion, realizing that their gift of sensitivity was not gifted. It was summoned. It was conjured unconsciously in response to danger. A child does not become empathic because the world celebrates their spirit, but because they had to intuit the unspoken to stay safe. So what the world praises in the empath compassion, patience, intuition is often merely the visible residue of their invisible wound. And that wound has a name, the wound of self-erasure. For years, perhaps decades, the empath walks through life like a mirror without a frame, reflecting and absorbing, bending light for others. They become attuned to moods, to shifts in energy, and the tremble in someone's voice before they even speak. They develop this sixth sense not because they are divine, though they often are, but because they were trained by trauma. When you grow up amidst emotional instability, you become fluent in the language of unspoken tension. You learn to detect storms in silence. You smile. You serve. You soothe, hoping that in doing so, love will remain. But love, true love, cannot be earned through sacrifice. The moment the empath realizes this is the moment the truth begins to rise from the deep. At first, it comes quietly, a strange unease when saying yes again, a fatigue that sleep cannot repair, a sensation of betrayal, though no one has betrayed them but themselves. Then the dreams begin. The psyche, no longer satisfied with the lie, stirs beneath consciousness and brings forth images. The empath drowning in water, running through collapsing houses, being chased by a faceless crowd. These are not nightmares, they are messages. The house is the structure of your false self. The drowning is the loss of boundaries. The crowd is the multitude of identities you've carried to please others. So the empath begins to question, who am I when no one is looking? Who am I if I am not needed? What remains when I stop giving? This is where the pain begins, because the answer at first is silence, emptiness, void. When one has spent their life constructing identity through pleasing others, the absence of that dynamic feels like death, and in a way, it is. It is the death of the false self, the ego that believed love is earned only by erasure. But here is a secret I want to whisper to you now. The void is not the end, it is the womb. The death you feel is not final, it is alchemical. The empath is being broken open not to be destroyed, but to be reassembled by truth. This awakening begins with rage. Yes, rage, compassion, not forgiveness, but unfiltered rage. Because when you stop pleasing everyone, you begin to see the exploitation. You see how your gentleness was manipulated, how your silence was interpreted as agreement, and how your presence was demanded but your needs dismissed. Do not run from this anger. It is not toxic. It is sacred. It is the fire that burns the codependent cords. It is the voice that says no more. It is the archetype of the warrior rising in the empath for the first time. And it is terrifying for someone who has built their identity around peacekeeping. The emergence of boundaries feels like violence, but it is not violence, it is protection. And protection is not cruelty, it is self-love in its most primal form. Here, the empath meets the shadow. For years, they have disowned their anger, disowned their selfishness, and disowned the part of them that wanted more. These qualities were buried, projected onto others, and shamed. But now, as they stop pleasing everyone, the shadow returns not to punish, but to integrate. The shadow says, "I am your unmet need. I am your silent scream. I am your stolen boundaries, and I have been waiting for you." Do not fear the shadow, fear the life you lived without it. We cannot be whole without reclaiming the pieces we've disowned. The empath's journey is not just one of compassion, but of reclamation to remember, to call back every fragment of the soul that was offered at the altar of approval. This is not a quick process. The empath will grieve not just for others, but also for the illusion they once called love. They will mourn relationships that were built upon performance. They will outgrow circles that once felt like home. They will become lonely not because they are unloved, but because they no longer fit the roles that kept them surrounded. And in that loneliness, something unexpected happens: stillness. For the first time, the empath is not rushing to fix, to help, or to absorb. They sit, they weep, they listen, they breathe, and they begin to hear a voice they haven't heard in years their own. It is quiet at first, fragile, like a child who hasn't been spoken to in decades. But it is there, and it says things the empath has forgotten how to say. I'm tired. I don't want this. I need. I matter. This is the return of the self. The empath begins to see not just others but also themselves. They look in the mirror and see the cost of always being kind. They notice the tightness in their chest, the weight in their gut, and the tears behind their eyes. They feel again not just for others, but for themselves. This is the threshold moment, the shift. When the empath stops pleasing everyone, they don't become selfish. They become sovereign. Sovereignty is not arrogance, it is alignment. It is knowing where you end and where another begins. It is being generous without being exploited. It is given from overflow, not depletion. It is no longer the emotional landfill for the world's pain. At this stage, the empath begins to attract different energy because they are no longer vibrating at the frequency of martyrdom. They no longer call in those who feed on saviors, the narcissists, the energy vampires, and the drama addicts. They fall away. And though this is painful, it is sacred. It is a clearing of the false to make room for the true. But make no mistake, this new path requires vigilance. The old self will whisper seductions. The impulse to please will return in moments of doubt. So the empath must become a mystic, a watcher of their soul, and a guardian of their energy. They must ask daily, am I giving from love or lack? Am I serving from joy or obligation? Am I seen or just useful? These are not selfish questions. They are sacred boundaries, because the world does not need more burnt-out empaths. It needs awakened whole ones who can say yes with joy and no without guilt. You must now understand. Your sensitivity is not your identity, it is your instrument. And like any instrument, it must be tuned, protected, and respected. You are not here to carry the world. You are here to feel it and then choose what to carry. You are not here to disappear for others' comfort. You are here to radiate your presence so fully that others remember their own. The empath who stops pleasing and starts seeing becomes something new. They become medicine. And now that you have tasted the medicine of truth, it will not let you return to ignorance. Once the veil has been lifted, once the psychic eye has opened and glimpsed its reflection, it cannot be sewn shut again. You are no longer here to be liked. You are here to be home. And this frightens the part of you still addicted to being chosen. Yes, addiction, we must name it honestly. People-pleasing is not simply a trait. It is an addiction to validation, a psychic compulsion to merge, to fix, to smooth the edges of conflict. Not because you are good, but because you are afraid. But beneath that fear, something stirs a deeper self, one that does not beg to belong but already knows it does, not to others, but to existence itself. You were not born to fulfill others' unfinished emotional homework. You are a sovereign psyche, and your life belongs to you. The moment you realize this, not intellectually but somatically, is the moment you reclaim your psychic throne. And when the empath sits on their throne, the dynamic reverses. No longer do they orbit around others' needs. Others begin to revolve around the gravitational pull of their presence. Not because they manipulate, but because authenticity has a resonance. When you stop leaking your energy through unconscious giving, it becomes condensed, radiant, and magnetic. You don't speak louder. You simply speak from within. And that is power, not dominance, but power rooted in alignment. This is the empath reborn. No longer the sponge, no longer the servant, no longer the secret sufferer, but a sovereign being who chooses connection without compulsion, who gives without depletion, who loves without losing themselves. You may still feel deeply, but you no longer drown. You may still care, but you no longer carry what was never yours. You may still help, but only when it is a matter of helping, not self-sacrifice. The empath who stops pleasing and starts seeing does not lose their light. They finally learn how to aim it. You were never meant to dilute yourself for the comfort of others. You were meant to be the elixir that wakes them if they are ready. And if they are not, you continue walking, not in resentment, but in reverence for your path. This is what individuation means: becoming the self, not the persona, not the role, but the undivided totality of your being. You are no longer an empath who needs to be needed. You are a sovereign soul who chooses to feel. And so, to you who have felt too much, given too much, lost too much, I offer this. You are not broken. You are breaking open. You are not too sensitive. You are exquisitely attuned. You are not here to carry the world. You are here to embody your truth. Walk on, speak true, love wisely, and please, above all else, never again abandon yourself to be loved. The soul you betray when you please everyone is your own. And the soul you recover when you begin to see that soul is divine.